the centenary of the great, indomitable, venerable, and indefatigable Kingston College. I hail my alma mater this morning, this historic day, a great institution that has and continues to produce great Jamaicans. It was a tremendous credit for me, like the other tens of thousands of men who would have darkened the halls of that institution, to have had an opportunity at secondary level education at Kingston College. It was fitting in this, our 100th year of existence, for the school to have copped the Manning Cup and more recently the Mortimer Geddes Trophy. Boys Champs 2025. Hail KC this morning. The teachings that we would have got, what was inculcated with me when I went there as a 10-year-old back in 1994 September. Those teachings endure with me. The brave may fall, but never yield. That motto, what it means, stands tall, and it is forever etched in our minds and in our hearts. Congratulations, Kingston College, on 100 years of excellence, and we will bat on. I move from an institution marking his 100th anniversary to an institution that is in its infancy. The Integrity Commission was established by law in 2017. It subsequently commenced operations, and it is an institution in its infancy. Well-thinking Jamaicans, patriotic Jamaicans, Jamaicans who mean this country well and their fellow men well, support the Integrity Commission. Well-thinking Jamaicans recognize the importance of the Integrity Commission. It is an institution that took quite some time in coming. Indeed, the Integrity Commission is an amalgamation of a number of predecessor entities. The Integrity of Members Commission, the Corruption Prevention Commission, and of course the former Office of the Contractor General. They all have been amalgamated. They have been consolidated into what we have now, which is the Integrity Commission stroke the IC. For many years, the Office of the Contractor General lamented not having prosecutorial powers. And so it is to be understood that the prosecutorial powers that are now vested in the Integrity Commission represents a signal improvement and advance on what obtained previously. And it's very, very serious business. Here in Jamaica, we have grappled with corruption, and the perception of corruption, particularly in public office, has bedeviled the landscape in our country and indeed the body politic. Corruption is not to be countenanced, because corruption robs the public purse. It robs that taxpayer who deserves good road to drive on, who deserves street light, that taxpayer who deserves a reliable and fit for purpose public transportation system, that taxpayer who deserves to get a response from the police by way of a police vehicle dispatched to a scene when a call is made. That taxpayer who deserves appropriate health care is robbed whenever and wherever there is corruption. So let us be clear and unequivocal about what we're talking here. The Integrity Commission is again in the news. There's a development that ensued in recent days as there is change of personnel at the IC and recruitment ongoing at the IC, certainly based on some positions for which the IC has advertised. In this case, the post of Director of Corruption Prosecution is in sharp focus. The former Director of Corruption Prosecution, Kesha Prince Kamika, has departed the IC. There are a number of allegations swirling around the place concerning the disgrunt of some of Mrs. Prince Kamika's colleagues at the IC in relation to the conduct and discharge of her duties as Director of Corruption Prosecution. It is felt or alleged that certainly in relation to a couple matters concerning Prime Minister Holness, in relation to which Mrs. Prince Kamika elected to not proffer charges, that some of her colleagues were considerably disgruntled, perhaps enraged. So her determination as the prosecutor at the IC was met with umbrage. So much so that it is alleged that Kesha Prince Kamika, the former Director of Corruption Prosecution at the IC, was told on or about the 13th of March that her contract that would expire further in March would not be renewed on expiration. And essentially, she was told, it is alleged, that she need not apply for renewal of her contract. So essentially, based on the allegations, based on what is being bandied about, yeah, Kesha Prince Kamika was booted from the IC. There was a matter concerning conflict of interest in relation to Andrew Holness in his capacity as Minister of Education, and Mrs. Prince Kamika ruled that there was insufficient evidence to make the case that the IC essentially was seeking to make. And in more recent times, on the question of the Integrity Commission's probe into Andrew Holness's financial affairs, further to an illicit enrichment probe, Mrs. Prince Kamika, on the question of the Prime Minister misleading the Integrity Commission, she elected not to proffer charges. And this is, of course, on the matter of some bank accounts belonging to Andrew Holness's parents that he did not declare. There are persons at the IC who wanted charges to have been proffered, and the good lady exercising, no doubt, her professional judgment and expertise, her experience as a seasoned prosecutor over many years, having served prior to her stint at the IC at the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, the DPP's office. She elected not to proffer charges. And then, with that being the case, it would appear as though Kevin Stevenson, the Director of Investigations, did not find it convenient, perhaps, to refer his findings and his recommendation to Mrs. Prince Kamika for a ruling. Perhaps he was concerned that she would not have proffered charges, as he, Kevin Stevens, would have seen on 2 occasions prior. So now, the Integrity Commission has been doing its work. And at least one of the senior members there, Kesha Prince Kamika, the same lady who proffered charges against Marissa Dalrymple Philibert, she proffered charges against the JLP's Leslie Campbell, she proffered charges against the PNP's Dwayne Vaz and the PNP's Michael Phillips. This lady had her work allegedly registering in a negative way with her colleagues at the IC. They took umbrage, it is alleged, to her rulings. The country may recall that in the dispensation when we had the Office of the Contractor General, Greg Christie, in his usual exuberant and overzealous style, would make recommendations to the Office of the DPP, make recommendations for prosecution. And Greg Christie had a particularly antagonistic relationship with Paula Llewellyn, because there are many rulings by Paula Llewellyn to which Greg Christie took umbrage. That is a matter of recorded fact and history. The public should appreciate that as Contractor General at the time, the considerations that goes into Greg Christie's work and indeed the recommendations made by him are in some ways different from the considerations that Paula Llewellyn as DPP would have to make. Greg Christie went about his work with a lot of song and dance. The job of a prosecutor is much different. A prosecutor has to be a bit more sober, and a prosecutor has to consider things and has to be constrained by considerations that Greg Christie need not have been constrained by. The prosecutor has to consider the likelihood of successful prosecution. The prosecutor has to consider whether the evidence being marshaled, whether the evidence being presented is sufficient to essentially make the case being made out. And I'm sure it is no different in the case of Mrs. Prince Kamika. But post Kesha Prince Kamika, a staffer at the IC has been elevated to act as Director of Corruption Prosecution. That staffer is one Ronif Lawrence. By way of a post to social media on the 26th of January 2025, the PNP's Chief Executive Officer, Dayton Campbell, its embattled General Secretary, Dayton Campbell, made a post to social media where about 5 gentlemen, himself included, along with Ronnie Lawrence, are in a particular photograph. The photograph appears to be a photo taken on the occasion of Mr. Ronnie Lawrence's wedding. And it appears as though Dayton Campbell was a member of the bridal party in terms of being one of Ronnie Lawrence's groomsmen. It appears as though, let either one of them come and confirm that. The same way it is alleged that Ronnie Lawrence is the godfather of one of Dayton Campbell's children. Let them come and tell us that or tell us otherwise. They must come and confirm or deny that. That is the allegation though. Yeah? So what do we have here? The gentleman who is now serving as Director of Corruption Prosecution at the IC, albeit acting at this time, is, based on what Dayton Campbell has asserted on social media, is a friend of his of over 20 years. There are persons who went to the University of the West Indies at the same time and lived essentially on Chancellor Hall and would have enjoyed fraternal relations as a result of that. What they call it, mans of black eye. Yeah? We know that insofar as a person's wedding is concerned, to the extent that one may serve as a groomsman to a groom, you are not just an associate in passing. You are a friend who is more like a brother than a friend. And so that is to be of considerable moment and consideration here. Dayton Campbell has a political agenda. And if the desperation of the PNP, certainly in recent times, is anything to go by, there is nothing that you can consider or think of as a listener this morning that would be off the table for the PNP. Julian Robinson, on or about the 17th or 18th of August 2024, in addressing the annual conference of the PNP's Women Movement, he made mention that Parliament, remember now, the gentleman was speaking in August of 2024, Parliament was on its usual summer recess, its summer break. And Mr. Julian Robinson mentioned in his address to the Women's Movement Conference that Parliament was set to resume shortly, in September. And on Parliament's resumption, a report of the Integrity Commission will come. And he, among other things, went on to implore the listening comrades to get ready for elections, because he was essentially telegraphing that a bam was coming down the pipeline. He was basically intimating that a report of the IC, which would be adverse to his political opponents, would be coming, such that it could either cause the government to collapse or it would force the hand of the Prime Minister such that he has no alternative but to seek a fresh mandate from the Jamaican people. That is what Julian Robinson was hinting at and alluding to. And subsequent to that, he would have been elsewhere about the place, talking rubbish, Julian Robinson that is, about the IC in its annual report mentioned that it will soon table report in Parliament. The IC's annual report that would have been tabled in Parliament prior to Julian Robinson speaking in August 2024 did not give any indication as to how soon or how imminent its tabling of the report would have been. The question therefore is, who, if anyone, caused or may have caused Julian Robinson, the PNP, or anyone else associated with that political party to have been aware of an imminent tabling of a report by the IC, because that is how it appears based on the goodly gentleman's utterance. And then Dayton Campbell did a similar thing, speaking on a political platform. But more specifically, Dayton Campbell, speaking with Cliff Hughes and Ricardo Brooks of Nationwide News Network on Monday, the 9th of September, 2024, essentially telegraphed and signaled to Cliff Hughes and Ricardo Brooks of NNN that if they believe that the report into Andrew Holness is only about his parents' accounts, that they are essentially mistaken. Now the question is, what is the basis on which Dayton Campbell, the PNP's embattled General Secretary, would be aware of the contents of a report prior to its tabling in the Parliament and it being made public? What is the basis on which he would have been able to speak with such confidence and assurance as to aspects or the contents of the report? I'm going to pause and come back and continue the commentary after this break. Stay with us.
News Talk 93 FM.